We're slowly getting reports back from Northeast Ohioans with ties to the hurricane-ravaged areas of Florida, and it's one of the stories we'll be talking about on Today in Ohio, the news podcast discussion from cleveland.com and the Plain Dealer. I'm Chris Quinn. I'm here with Lisa Garvin, Laura Johnston, and Layla Tassi. It's a Thursday. We always have good stuff to talk about on Thursdays. Let's get going. Reporter Sabrina Eaton takes a look at Dave Joyce's latest re-election battle in a year when the lines of his district have shifted a good bit. Lisa, what did she learn? Does Joyce have anything to worry about?
I'm not sure that he does because he probably dropped. I used to be in his old district, the 7th, and I'm in Cuyahoga County. But when they redrew it, it's now the 14th district, and it's basically moved east and south. So they got rid of Summit and Cuyahoga County people, and they gained parts of Portage and Trumbull, larger portions of that. Also, Ashtabula and Geauga Lake counties are totally within this new district. Now, Joyce has a huge fundraising advantage. He's raised nearly $2 million for his campaign. His opponent, Democrat Matthew Kilboy of Deerfield Township, has only raised $52,000 so far. Kilboy is a retired U.S. Navy nurse. He is openly gay. And then we talked, Sabrina talked to them about various different election issues. The biggest one on voters' minds that we know from several polls is inflation. Mr. Kilboy says he wants to shore up the supply chain and make more products domestically and break up consolidated companies. He feels like these are contributing to inflation. Dave Joyce says that he supports Republican Kevin McCarthy's Commitment to America, which is kind of a revamped version of Newt Gingrich's Contract with America. So that means lean and mean government, not giving money away, whatever that means, and energy independence. And looking at energy, as we know that our gas prices may go up because of the OPEC Plus decision yesterday, Dave Joyce says that President Biden has tried to kill fossil fuels, and he wants to maximize production of cleaner natural gas. Matt Kilboy says we really need to diversify our portfolio of non-fossil fuels, and that includes hydrogen and nuclear energy. So they pretty much diverged on all topics. Student debt. Matthew Kilboy says, I have student debt myself. He says it can certainly help low-income people escape the debt cycle, but he's worried about the burden it would place on middle-class taxpayers. He says they do need to address high tuition and predatory lending. Now, Joyce says that student debt forgiveness is completely wrong. He hopes that the Supreme Court overturns it, and he calls it Biden's debt transfer plan of up to $600 billion. So they pretty much diverged on most of the biggest topics that I think are on voters' minds in November.
We're going to be reporting next week on a new poll that's coming out that deals with many interesting topics, including student debt. I think we might all be surprised. Lisa, Dave Joyce has always been considered kind of the friendly guy. He doesn't come across as a staunch Donald Trump guy. He's I wouldn't say he's middle of the road. He's a conservative Republican, but he's the kind of guy people like as a neighbor. So it's hard to dislodge an incumbent who is a guy people wouldn't mind having a beer with, right?
Right. And he has been kind of common sense as far as Ohio Republicans go. He is part of the cannabis caucus. He is a former prosecutor who saw the damage that was done by people who were just, smoking recreational marijuana, had their lives ruined by arrests. So, he was kind of behind the push for legalizing marijuana. So, and actually, when I was in his district, I voted for him the last time. So.
Yeah, I think it'll be very hard. And you're right. The adjustment of the lines don't make much of a difference. He's, I think, in a pretty strong position. It's a good story by Sabrina. It's on cleveland.com. You're listening to Today in Ohio. Few national stories have been as hard to read about as the devastation parts of Florida suffered from Hurricane Ian. And the parts hardest hit are popular winter homes for quite a few people native to Northeast Ohio. Laura, we did a story looking at this, saw some dramatic numbers. What did we learn?
Yeah, property records in Lee County, where Fort Myers, Sanibel, and I think Cape Coral are, show about 3,000 people still listing Ohio as their primary address. And there's Florida is full of Ohioans, basically. 542,000 Ohio natives live full-time in Florida. From 2019 to 2020 alone, 24,000 people moved from Ohio to Florida. And when you look at Lee County specifically, among the hardest hit of the hurricane, there are primary addresses, 46 with Medina, 44 from Chagrin Falls, 38 from Strongsville and Westlake, and 34 from Hudson. So it is a popular place to retire from Ohio, to have a second home. And those people, we had some reporters reach out to them and see how they were doing.
Yeah, and the people we talked to didn't seem to have suffered the worst devastation. When you look at the video, there's some time-lapse videos up now where it just shows buildings literally washing away in the big surges, especially on the Fort Myers beach. And we're still looking to talk to more. With so many people owning property down there, I suspect that a lot of them probably don't know yet how bad things are because communication remains a pretty serious problem.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is it happened in late September. A lot of times snowbirds don't head down till wintertime, like after Thanksgiving, after Christmas. So I think there'll be people that don't go down this, or only going down to assess the damage and won't be able to use their places.
And I lived in Florida for 9 years, so it's not a surprise to me that a lot of Ohioans lived there. I'm going to offend everybody who's listening. They were all the bad drivers. You knew if you were in a traffic jam, it was an Ohio license plate at the front of it. The problem they're facing, because every time a storm came through, this happened, there's a huge demand for contractors. You and Layla know what that's like in normal times, but could you imagine if every house in your neighborhood needed a contractor? And so you get a lot of fly-by-night outfits that don't do good work. It's very, very hard to get quality people to come in and do the repairs. And you're in trouble because if your home has been punctured or has holes in it where the weather is coming in, you're kind of in an emergency situation. So we're hoping to hear from more. If you have any information about property down there belonging to Ohioans, send us a note. We'd love to hear about it.
I wanted to add that Susan Glaser, our travel writer, wrote a really heart-aching piece actually about Sanibel Island and her family ties to that. And she last wrote a travel piece in January. And so she says she can't wait to walk the beaches of Sanibel again. But she doesn't know when that will be. And I feel like a lot of people are probably feeling the same way.
I know, but you always wonder why we build on these islands.
That's a very good question.
They're barrier islands. They're always going to get buffeted at some point. And is it wise to continue to put houses on them? Should they just be parks that you visit and then you don't have all of this damage? There was an interesting story I read out of Florida where pretty much any building since 2007 withstood it because they greatly improved their building codes after 2007. And so the houses are much more hurricane proof. And one of the people we talked to in the story talked about his condo is
hurricane proof, right?
Yeah.
It's like earthquake proof. Like, is it really? Or fireproof? But there have been a lot of substantial, improvements in building.
Yeah, and the buildings that are still standing are largely the newer ones. It's Today in Ohio. What have we learned so far about how Cleveland might be using delay tactics to hold on to income tax refunds as long as possible, collecting interest on it? Layla, I think there should be a law that whatever date this year people get their refunds, that's the date next year where if they owe them any money, they have to pay by. Forget April 15th. If they're holding our money till November, we shouldn't have to give them anything till next November.
I love that. That's a great policy. Chris, I know you had received one of these shady letters from Cleveland's Central Collections Agency insisting that you hadn't sent in your W-2s and other forms that needed to process your income tax refund.
Total lie.
So you had put out a call to readers on Subtext asking to hear from others, and we did hear from others. There were remote workers who told us that they were experiencing the same thing. They had gotten letters telling them to provide documentation that they had already submitted. And if they didn't send in those records within 30 days, their refund could be denied, is what CCA had told them. Income tax administrator Kevin Preslin told Courtney Astolfi that's not common, but it is happening to people. And after her story ran yesterday, Courtney actually told me that she heard from one person who said that they work for Cleveland schools and that this person said a number of their colleagues and themselves had received these letters. So we're talking about city workers who are receiving these letters as well. So CCA couldn't quantify for us how many of those letters requests. I know, right? Likely story. They said they don't keep that data. So we definitely want to hear from listeners who have gotten one of these letters despite having already sent in all the documentation. So if you're in this boat, please reach out to Courtney Astolfi. You can reach her at C-S-Stolfi. That's C-A-S-T-O-L-F-I at cleveland.com. Preslin had said that CCA might be requesting more info from people because, documentation provided by employers didn't include all the info that they needed. And they're
making this up. Look, we heard from, you want to say, well, Chris Quinn, you can say you sent your stuff in, but you probably didn't. Okay, I did, but it doesn't matter. We're hearing from accountants whose business it is to provide these records.
Yeah, right.
And they're saying they're getting the letters. And they're like, I'm a CPA. I don't make that mistake because I wouldn't have a job if I did. This is a shameful performance by the Justin Bibb administration. Instead of doing the service they're supposed to do, they're holding on to the money as long as they can. And we got more stories coming on this.
Yeah, we do.
I was talking to somebody this week who was really worried about downtown not coming back. We're going to do some stories on this, but it's not coming back. And I was talking about, workers don't want to come back. They don't want to deal with this. Their money it's October. This money was collected in 2020, 2021, and they still don't have it back. And many of them had to pay extra taxes to their home municipalities that they're now in the gap. This is poor service by Justin Bibb. We talked to him about it, 2 weeks ago, and he said, I'll look into that. We'll get on that. Nothing has happened so far, and people still don't have their money.
Right. Yeah, and in fact, they promised us a meeting with our editorial board, and we are still waiting for that as well.
They ghosted us completely after that. We actually gave them the benefit of the doubt, and finally, I think after 2 weeks went by, it's like, let's write the story. We're not going to wait for this nonsense. But the other agency that does this, RETA, has none of these issues. I mean, you deal with RETA, it's efficient, it's easy. One of our colleagues finally got his Cleveland refund last week, and he reached out to RETA to say, okay, I got my refund. You told me back when I filed my return, wait until you get your refund and then you can pay the difference. And he got in touch with them and they immediately responded. They sent him the bill for what his taxes are in his home city, and he paid them. Went like clockwork. The CCA, run by the city, like almost everything run by City Hall, nightmare to deal with. Mm-hmm. All right, please send the notes. C. Astolfi at cleveland.com. We want to hear from you. It's Today in Ohio. We've talked about some sports books coming to the pro teams in Cleveland, but the places where most people gamble in Northeast Ohio now are also getting into sports betting. Lisa, where do they stand?
Oh, they are ready to go, and they're going to be ready even before sports betting becomes legal on January 1st. So Jack Entertainment is chomping at the bit here. They're building casino-style lounges at both their downtown Jack Casino and the Thistledown Racino locations. They're going to open by November 26th, just in time for the Ohio State-Michigan game, even though, like I said, sports betting is not legal till January 1st, but they want to give people a taste of what's to come, I guess. So Jack Entertainment has 2 of the 5, brick and mortar sports books in Cuyahoga County, along with the Browns, the Guardians, and the Cavaliers. And then MGM Northfield in Summit County also will be building out a sports book there. So Jack Entertainment's Vice President of Design and Construction, Gino Del Pup, said they want an exciting Las Vegas-like atmosphere. And they're already building this out. They have a temporary wall and they're building like crazy. So in the downtown location, it's going to be 6,000 square feet on the first floor near the Prospect Avenue entrance. They'll have 45 recliners with built-in phone chargers. They'll have betting kiosks. They'll have 5 betting windows. They'll have also table games and slot machines in the area. There will be seating for 99 people in the downtown one. In Thistledown, slightly smaller, It's going to be 4,200 square feet with 76 seats, 28 of them the theater style recliners, but they won't have table games, only slots. So yeah, they want to invite people in. They can't bet, but at least they'll get a good look at it. Big video walls in both locations, and they're now hiring. So if you're looking for a job, you can ring them up.
This is an interesting, almost David versus Goliath battle, because there are 5 or 6 big national sports books, FanDuel and those. And we're actually working with a partner. We get some revenue if people go through our site to sign up for these things. And you just wonder, will people use the apps for these major companies that, advertise on every football game? Or will they go for an experience like you're talking about, this Las Vegas-like experience where you sit and have a drink and you're watching the games and checking out where your bets are going? It's hard to tell, but a lot of money's being invested in it.
Yeah, but I think people do want that experience, and they want to be with other fans. There's nothing like being in a bar when there's a football game on. People get excited, you get excited. But, a Jack has got their hands in, mobile betting. They have the Bet Jack app, which is up and running for training purposes only. So they're covering all their bases.
Yeah, they're all trying to register as many people now so they can hit them up January 1st and say, "Hey, it's legal now. Bet, spend some money." So we'll have to check these things out when they're up and running to see what kind of business they're doing. It's Today in Ohio. How much will a Cleveland construction company pay for its negligence in a road paving contract that led to the death of a worker? Laura, this is a horrifying accident that occurred here, and the company really did put the worker into jeopardy.
This is really sad. It's a $17 million jury assessment in favor of his estate that the man's widow, Shelley Solers, filed this wrongful death lawsuit against a construction company called Perk, and the case went to trial. So that's what they decided. If you remember this case, this was 2019. Subcontractor David Solers was struck in a lane that should have been blocked off with orange barrels by the project contractor. That was Perk. They were responsible for the work zone safety. This was 3 a.m. on Cedar Road. He was working as a painter during a resurfacing and repaving project, and the stuff that was supposed to protect him was off to the side on the sidewalk. He died, leaving behind a wife and 3 children. And to make the story even more intriguing and sad, the motorist who struck him, Wiley Bridgman, was originally named as a co-defendant in this case, but he had just spent 37 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit, and then he was released in 2014. He has since died.
The idea that you had a painter on the road without traffic cones
at
to
3 in the
protect
morning.
them. It's very dark. It's hard to see. And if you're driving through a construction zone, you kind of rely on those cones to tell you where the zone is. It's just horrifying. And the price they're going to pay is very, very high. You would hope that this would be a warning to anybody in the construction business to make sure they do the safety elements.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's Today in Ohio. We have not talked about Say Yes to Education in quite a while, but Hannah Drown and Cameron Fields including a look at it as part of the continuing series called Cleveland's Promise. Well, this is, of course, the program that makes sure every kid who graduates from a Cleveland high school gets to go to college. Where does it stand?
Yeah, I think Eric Gordon's final State of the School speech a couple weeks back will always be remembered for that response that he gave to that young student who asked about the future of Say Yes to Education once he leaves the district, when he pointed to other Say Yes school districts like Buffalo, where all these new superintendents had floated the idea of killing that scholarship program. And he concluded by saying, Say Yes is still there. They are not. And that really does get at the essence of how powerful and important this program has become, which grants full scholarships to CMSD graduates for all public colleges, universities, and Pell-eligible job training programs in the state, and more than 100 private institutions nationwide. But just as importantly, Say Yes provides wraparound services at CMSD schools, from social services to basic needs like deodorant and clothing, services that really begin to alleviate the burdens that poverty creates so kids can really focus on on making school their full-time job from the very earliest years in the district. So that by the time they're in high school, these students are ready for the next step because, like Gordon says, they've had someone blocking and tackling for them all those years. So Say Yes, Cleveland is one of only 4 of its kind in the nation. Gordon has managed to attract $95 million in investment for it. As of this past spring, more than 1,300 students have enrolled in college or career training programs because of Say Yes Cleveland, and nearly 80 students have totally completed their studies and graduated from those programs. Mm-hmm. And we expect those numbers to rise given that CMSD's graduation rates have jumped nearly 30% since 2011, and we've seen a 72% increase in high-quality preschool enrollment since 2013, which really sets the stage for success even further into the future. So everything is really humming along nicely for this really incredible program.
Well, and what Gordon said has some relevance. He pointed out that in Buffalo, they had CEOs come in that wanted to get rid of Say Yes, which is mind-boggling. Why would anybody want to get rid of Say Yes? But CEOs often have egos, and if they weren't the one to bring it in, then it's not something they can take credit for. They might want to get rid of it. I wonder whether we're at such a juncture. We've reported on the very odd behavior by Mayor Justin Bibb with regard to Gordon. He never had a conversation about the future of education in Cleveland, and Gordon finally read the writing on the wall and decided he would leave at the end of the school year. You worry that because Bibb wasn't involved in bringing Say Yes to education, that he'll be like the people in Buffalo that weren't committed to it, and whoever he appoints to CEO won't be committed to it. You hope Gordon is right when he tells the students they're all gone. Say Yes is still here.
Well, I'll tell you what, Justin Bibb had the front row seat to that speech, and I kind of read Eric Gordon's comment as the shot across the bow in defense of Say Yes, and I think that will echo for a while. I mean, it is incredibly powerful, and $95 million in private investment. I mean, that's out of this world support for this.
I also wonder if it could be used as an economic development tool to get people to move into Cleveland because, you go to 4 years of a CMSD high school and they have some incredible programs. Like the same students stood up and talked about their robotics, club that they have at these schools. And then you go to school for free anywhere in the state of Ohio to a public school. You go to Ohio State, you go to Miami. I mean, it's enough to make you think, I could move into the city.
I know. Actually, I had
that thought.
It got my wheels turning too when I started thinking about it.
Edgewater looks like a lovely neighborhood.
Yeah. I'll tell you. I mean, it really. I mean, they absolutely should leverage that, and they should make this a huge campaign to get families to come back into the city.
Yeah.
But there's weirdness here. There's real weirdness between Bibb and education. There are people that are greatly fearing that he's going to shift city resources much more into charter schools.
That's true.
And the problem is he's not speaking. I mean, all we know is he never had the conversation about education with Eric Gordon. And even if he wants to replace Eric Gordon, you want to pick the guy's brain. He's been running things for a decade. So you normally wouldn't think anything of it. You would think, why would anybody want to get rid of Say Yes to education? But because of the weirdness we're seeing, this might be something that needs a campaign.
Do you think he planted that question in the audience?
No, I doubt that.
I'm joking.
I highly do. But the $95 million should last a while, though. I can't remember exactly how many years that will stretch, but he's got it covered for some time.
Yeah, let's hope. It's Today in Ohio. The former Kirtland police chief received some attention when he was fired because the town accused him of controversial behavior, to say the least. We now have his formal response in a civil suit. Lisa, what does he contend?
This is quite the soap opera over there in Kirtland. So former Kirtland Police Chief Lance Nasi was fired last year for several allegations, and he filed a suit this week against the city of Kirtland, its mayor, Kevin Potter, the law director, Matthew Lalo, and 6 out of 7 council members. We'll get to that a little bit later. They say that the suit says that they violated his rights and fired him without just cause. He wants his job back. He wants to punish city officials, and he wants damages on top of that. So let's get to the story. So Nasi was fired back in August of 2021 after a 3-month investigation into allegations that he was habitually drunk on the job, that he would disappear on personal business for several hours while he was on duty. Also accused of verbally abusing his employees, using vulgar gestures and language and racist language. So in the suit, Nasi accuses the mayor of being an alcoholic. And Nasi, during this time, he did agree to enter rehab, which he did last April as an inpatient at Lutheran Hospital for 6 weeks. During his stay, the law director, Lalo, tried to convince him to resign, and he refused, and then he got fired. So there were 6 of 7 council people who voted to fire him. The one who didn't, Kelly Wolf, was accused of having an affair with Chief Nasi. She was the only no vote on his firing, and she is not named in the lawsuit either.
This is just, when you have small government like this, you get into this, Peyton Place kind of gossipy stuff. It is interesting, though, if he went into rehab and basically said, I have a health condition, I'm an alcoholic, and was getting treatment, that they would fire him in the middle of that you would have thought that might be a factor, that they'd say, well, he's getting treatment for it, let's see how it goes. But they didn't, right? When he didn't quit, they just kicked him out.
That is correct, yes. And so, and like I said, when he was, in treatment, they were trying to convince him to resign, and he refused. So, yeah, that looks a little bit like kicking somebody while they're down.
Well, and there are employment laws. It'll be interesting. The other thing is, you don't know if he did everything that they said he did. It sounds like this is a major civil war in this town, and so they're lodging all the complaints. It's like any kind of divorce where the allegations are always pretty outsized to what the facts are. So it'll be interesting to watch this one go through the courts, because he wants his job back and he wants money, right?
Yes, he wants damages. They are not specified at this time, but he also wants city officials to be punished. I mean, the lawsuit made that clear. So yeah, he doesn't just want money; he wants revenge. And I do want to.
Go ahead. The depositions in this will be fascinating, because they'll get into the affair, they'll get into all of the abusive stuff that is alleged.
And just this little tidbit, Kelly Wolf, the alleged affair woman, she resigned from council the day before an election to recall her. So there's another twist in that story.
Okay. It's Today in Ohio. Ohioans love their parks, and one of the state parks has what could be a terrific new feature. Which park, Laura, and what's the feature?
Hocking Hills, and it has a new lodge. It's a resort, really. The pool looks absolutely divine. An 81-room hotel at Hocking Hills State Park. It's set among some of the most spectacular scenery in the state. There are waterfalls, caves, intricate rock formations, all nearby. And this is the first new lodge to be built in a park since Maumee Bay State Park and Toledo opened in 1991. Now, there is the one in Geneva on the lake that's owned by Ashtabula County. So this is the first one that's been directly from the state. And it looks pretty amazing. And this is the most popular state park in Ohio. So it's going to be full.
Well, and that story I think it was the most popular story on our site.
Yes, it was.
People love parks here.
Well, and I think Hocking Hills is this destination. It's in the central area of Ohio, so it's kind of in the middle of everyone. And it's kind of, I've only been there once. I went zip lining in it, and it was very cool, but it is the most popular state park in Ohio. So that lots of people want to go there already. And now you look at this with these new guest rooms, 2 swimming pools, a restaurant called Rock House that features a Cleveland native chef named Matt Rapazzelli, who is apparently pretty well known, a 3-story main lobby with dramatic views of the parkland. So even though it's opening in November, in what is like the tail end of hiking season, I guess, I bet you it's going to be full year round.
Yeah, I bet it's hard to get a room. We have a good story about it. It's on cleveland.com. It's Today in Ohio. Let's do one more. Layla, this has been on your list for about a week. Let's catch up with the story that slipped by last week, the unionization of yet another Starbucks in Greater Cleveland. How many is it now?
Oh, man, we're up to 5 in Cuyahoga County with the addition of the Starbucks in Crocker Park. Workers there voted 7-2 to unionize. 3 stores in Cleveland unionized: the West 6th Street Starbucks in the Warehouse District, the Clifton Boulevard store near Cleveland's border with Lakewood, and the store in University Circle. The other store is in Cleveland Heights on Mayfield Road. Provided that the company and union hadn't filed objections in the 5 days after that vote, the results would have been certified and Starbucks would be required to bargain in good faith with that new unit at Crocker Park. So Starbucks announced last week that it was ready to negotiate, sending letters to more than 200 stores, according to reporting from CNBC. No stores have actually negotiated a contract despite the first union vote that was held at a Buffalo, New York store in December 2021. But as of Thursday morning, so that would be last Thursday morning, 243 Starbucks have voted to unionize across the country.
That's the challenge, is once they vote to unionize, negotiating the contract, and that's where employers can try to drag their feet. But you say not a single one has a contract.
That's what's reported. Yeah, wow. Not yet. So,
wow. At some point, that could lead to legal action if they just don't get there. Interesting that we've got 5. It's Today in Ohio. That does it for Thursday. Thank you, Layla, Lisa, and Laura. Thanks for listening. We'll be back Friday to wrap up the week.